Top NFL draft wide receivers Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabers, and Odunze soar in the early fantasy football rookie dynasty rankings. Find out just how high they all are in this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We're part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Vinnie Iyer, and I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com, including looking in depth at the NFL draft coming up next week. Hard to believe, a week and a day. All my latest mocks, the breakdowns of all the prospects are up there. My usual co-host, Michelle Majuk, is off today, just a little bit under the weather, so covering for her today on today's show, and we will look at the dynasty rookie fantasy football rankings. These are according to the consensus of the experts on Fantasy Pros, so that's kind of where the lean is right now with a lot of these rookies before they're attached and on NFL teams. So we'll look at Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabers, Odunze, the consensus top three wide receivers, see how high they're all ranked, as well as some other players, Brock Bowers, Caleb Williams. So we'll go pretty comprehensive deep, go into about tier 8 or tier 9 of these players on today's show before they even have NFL teams. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, let's start looking at the top 4 tiers. This is way high on the board here for Dynasty. And Marvin Harrison Jr., let's start with him, the iconic wide receiver prospect out of Ohio State, son of Marvin Harrison, the Colts Hall of Famer, big-time fantasy star we know for many years with Peyton Manning in Indianapolis. Marvin Harrison looks like he's going to end up in Arizona, the younger version. Right now, he's at 11 overall. That's right. In dynasty rankings, that is really high. He's in the top 12 players. So that would say if you're doing a dynasty draft right now in a 12-team league, he would be in the first round. And he's on the board as wide receiver 7. This is in full point PPR. That's what's offered right now. So when you look at that on Fantasy Pros, is this too high or too low for Marvin Harrison? I don't think it's too low at all. Too high? No, either. So I think it's right in the spot here because there's a lot of special young receivers. We know the established nature of Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, some of these younger stars that have been in the league for a while, and we know what they're giving us and we're getting from them with their current offenses and quarterback situations. We'll see what we get from Harrison. We still have a little bit of variable there, but he should be playing with Kyler Murray and the Cardinals and be the alpha. They're the clear number 1 ahead of Michael Wilson and the other receivers they have that make up a weak depth chart, including Greg Dortch. So if he goes to Cardinals, he's going to rock it. If he goes to the Chargers and lasts there somehow to number 5 with Justin Herbert, he's going to destroy it. If he somehow goes to the Bills in a trade up, he's going to be awesome. We've talked about these 3 teams having the biggest void at wide receiver. And I wouldn't be surprised if some team kind of bangs the table and say, we're going to make an aggressive move, try to jump the Cardinals to get Harrison. That's how good this player is. But you got to be pretty confident in your quarterback situation and other positions to say we can go get Harrison. And you really need to say that he's going to be our number 1 and we have to target him that way. If you have a Bengals team with Chase or the Vikings with Jefferson, they're not going to go this direction, right? Even though they could use some help and some big playability, they've got some other things to worry about here. So it's going to be the teams that really are looking for the number 1. I guess the sleeper team that you would look at, the Jets, and then the Giants maybe sliding up from 6 to getting Harrison. But however you look at it, whatever quarterback from Kyler Murray to Daniel Jones, Harrison is very special. He can dominate right away. He's going to score quite a few touchdowns. He's a very good route runner and can stretch the field. So anything we've seen before with Julio Jones and AJ Green, and most recently Chase and Jefferson. That's the type of rookie season and immediate impact we're going to get from Harrison on his way to being an absolute dynasty stud for the first several years of his career. All right, let's go to the next wide receiver. Malik Nabers has been right there with him, and he's right there with him in the rankings here. 18th overall in the rookie dynasty overall rankings there. So when you look at that, I mean, he's right there with the veterans as well. He's wide receiver 11 on the board. So yet another wide receiver one we're looking at in dynasty among the veterans, the young veterans that are available. So is this too high or too low? I think Nabers is pretty special in his own right. So I think this is just about right, just like we had Harrison there. Nabers is that kind of talent. We've seen it with Jefferson and Chase. We brought them up. These guys are also from LSU, and they've been very impactful in this league. And Nabers has this kind of upside. He can play in the slot. He can make big plays. We've seen it with Jefferson. He transitioned really well from being a dedicated slot out of necessity at LSU to just being an awesome outside receiver. Jamar Chase has played a lot inside. So that versatility is going to help, as well as the big playability of Malik Nabers. He's an alpha. So again, there's other teams. It's not just the Cardinals. We talked about the Giants, Bills, Jets, Chargers. There's a lot of teams, including the Titans there with Will Levis, that you'll have Malik Nabers have an impact. So I would think it's Harrison and Nabers in that order, maybe even back-to-back at number 4 and number 5 there to the Cardinals and Chargers. If not, the Giants should be waiting there at 6 or the Titans. So pretty high on the list for these guys to be drafted, immediately have number 1 potential on their teams. That's why they're so high among the veterans there. So good stuff there. I can't disagree with either of these. Harrison Nabers are special talents, and they belong right where they are on the board. Now, Odunze, pretty aggressive because we don't know exactly where it's going to end up. There's been rumors about the Bears getting him at number 9 or the Jets seeing him at 10. There's also potential for the Giants at 6 to go in that direction should Harrison Nabers go to the Cardinals and Chargers, respectively, they're ahead. So when we look at that, Odunze, if he's with the Giants, I think that's a really good fit because he can stretch the field. He's a little bit like Stephon Diggs would be in that Brian Dable, Mike Kafka offense, and that's what they would try to treat him as a clear number 1 with a bunch of targets here. Could we see the Bills also go up and get him? Yes, possibly. If you have Harrison Nabers off the board, they might be aggressive to try to make a move up so they get the 3rd receiver before it drops off to the next tier of the pretty good receivers. But Odunze, great career at Washington, big field stretcher, a lot of size. He can do a lot of things on the field, good technically sound route runner. So I think he could be special. And it would not surprise me if Odunze gets to a point where he's scoring or out producing what Harrison Nabers are doing based on the situation with the quarterback and the passing offense. Now, he's the 33rd player on the board overall with the dynasty rankings. He's wide receiver 19, so just outside, again, the middle of the road kind of picks there. When you look at wide receiver 1, that's where you're going to be targeting Harrison Nabers. Just a little bit after that, Odunze at wide receiver 19. Now, that could be a little bit low. I think he is capable of just putting up the same type of numbers in the right situation as the other guys. So the drop off 7 spots into the middle tier of the wide receiver 2s there in Dynasty, I think is a little bit low for Odunze. I think he's that good of a receiver. And this class, we've seen the history of the past 2 classes. The rookies have had an immediate impact. So if you can trust the rookies in the right situations, these guys are going to be right up there with the veterans producing in fantasy football. So really good rankings there, but that's what I would target a lot in that order. I think Odunze and Nabers are pretty close here, but Harrison definitely a little bit of separation from those 2. And I really think all 3 are can't miss. So we're in good shape going forward at wide receiver with 3 elite talents entering the league that are all going to be drafted in the high first round, all for sure in the top 10. Now we'll get into where Brock Bowers and Caleb Williams, the top tight end, top quarterback in this draft class respectively, fall in our next segment. Then we'll go rapid fire, go deep here into the top 130 overall in dynasty rankings to see where a bunch of other rookies are, including Brian Thomas and Blake Corum. We'll do that in our final segment. So a lot to come still on today's show, breaking down the rookie dynasty fantasy football rankings. All right, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football, as we told you at the top, is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Just like in the NFL, we're drafting and getting players, whether it's the real NFL teams or us for fantasy. You want to put together the winning lineup there for you as a small business. LinkedIn just isn't a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, more than 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like professionals on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire effectively. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They've even launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Make sure your business is one of those. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, we'll get into the fantasy dynasty value at the moment of the top tight end, Brock Bowers, and the top quarterback, Caleb Williams, in the 2024 NFL draft class. We do have an exciting thing to announce here tonight. That's right, tonight, April 17th. If you're listening to the show on a Wednesday, it's Locked On NFL's Mock Draft Live at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, streaming on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channel app. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on April 7th, right? It'll all be up there for you. April 17th, I should say, at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, to hear who the Locked On experts are taking for every NFL franchise with live reactions from your local college football experts. And don't forget about us, even the fantasy football angle. Locked On NFL Mock Draft, April 17th. That's April 17th, tonight. You can check it out anytime. It goes live at 7 Eastern Time, streaming live on Locked On Sports Today, 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. All right, where does Brock Bowers land? I mean, he's a special tight end. He's a top 10 overall talent in this draft. He's actually at 49 overall, so 16 spots after Odunze. We had Marvin Harrison at 11, Nabers at 18, 33 for Odunze overall. These guys were pretty high among the wide receivers. Well, Bowers is extremely high at tight end. He's the tight end 4 on the board. That's how talented Bowers out of Georgia is. He's a special athlete, can catch the ball anywhere, short to intermediate threat, has a bit of a seam field stretching ability as well. Just very special. A very talented tight end. We saw with Kyle Pitts, he hasn't quite materialized to have the big seasons yet, but he has had a 1,000-yard campaign in the NFL. This is this type of tight end that you're going to get. And the Jets have been rumored to be the landing spot, if not the Chargers there at number 5, if they want to make him the new Mark Andrews for Greg Roman in that offense. But you would look, Bowers would be a great fit with the Jets because he would play out off Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall for Aaron Rodgers. We talked about that. That's a really good landing spot. But really, wherever Bowers goes, that team is going to covet him and target him quite a bit as a key part of their passing game. So we're excited about that regardless. Again, I think his skill set is remarkable. I think he's got a better pedigree coming in with a better team overall. I know Kyle Pitts was very productive in Florida, but Brock Bowers was an integral part of Georgia and their just continued domination. And last couple seasons didn't quite make it all the way to win a 3rd straight championship, but still very special receiver. Bowers has battled some injuries, but he is very durable overall and will make a ton of plays for wherever he lands in the NFL. So he's at 49 again. That's pretty darn good. He's just made the top 50. Tight end 4. Yeah, it's a changing of guard at tight end. We'll have Trey McBride and Dalton Kincaid, part of the new wave here, leading it as rookies from, well, really second year for McBride, but rookie for Kincaid. The younger guys from the last 2 classes, I thought those were the most talented tight ends from those last 2 classes, McBride and Kincaid, and we definitely know that Bowers is that. So he's pretty high, tight end 4. I think that's fair. I mean, we're going to have a little bit of decline. Travis Kelce is near the end of his career. George Kittle is 30. Mark Andrews is taking on some wear and tear. There's just going to be some flipping here, and we're not going to really buy too much into Evan Ingram and those middling guys. And we know TJ Hawkinson He's coming off a major knee injury, and he's getting older as well. So it really lines up to go after these young tight ends. McBride, Kincaid, who's now the Bills' maybe top receiver at this point, and Bowers are definitely going to be the future of this position in both reality and fantasy pass catching. All right. Our first quarterback comes at 72 overall. He's pretty high. He's QB9. It's Caleb Williams. No surprise there. We know he's going to the Bears, so there's no variable there. We know he's going to be the number one quarterback. He's not going to be on the bench here for Chicago. He's going to start from week one. We know he's got special qualities as a passer and runner that can put up numbers right away. He's going to inherit some pretty good weapons, starting with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen and Cole Kmet at tight end. So very good group of receivers to start immediately there in Chicago. Just needs a little bit of offensive line help. So, yeah, Caleb Williams is very attractive. QB9. Again, there's some flux here. I think it started last year. CJ Stroud, the flashes of Anthony Richardson before he went down. We could still see Bryce Young have an impact at some point. Will Levis could also have a good career going forward. But yeah, Williams is right up there, and he has a little bit better vibe than some of these guys, even from last year's class. So Williams taking over the Bears. We know how Justin Fields was. We know Fields was a lot running dependent. Williams can get it done with his legs too, but has an improv element on top of the passing downfield. So QB9, I think, is very fair. This is pretty good for him, right? Immediately to go into that spot where you trust him in the top 12 for the long-term big picture. Yeah, I think that's fair. This guy has been can't miss for a while. He's the number one overall pick. The Bears are kind of locked into what he can do and really built what they want to do here offensively around his talent. So I like that as the number one pick. There's no doubt that they're going to get him. So I like this ranking. It's aggressive. It might seem as the QB9, again, 72 overall on the board for Williams, but love it. And again, I think if anything with these, it could just be too low. I think there's some conservative nature with these rookies, but if you think they're going to be special and they have that ability in the right system, go for it. I mean, I think these are going to really be big time assets here. And we will look at some other ones here that have a few more question marks. I don't think there's much about these top five that we've talked about, but rest of the board, that's why they're kind of scattered and we're not sure. There could be a lot in flux here. There could be people that just emerge from way down that step into great roles that are not being considered even on this list. So we'll look at that all the way again through the top 130 overall in the dynasty rankings to see where the rest of the rookies rank in our last segment. We've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure whether you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right. We're talking about the smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go. It lets you compete with your friends to get the most, richest, and the biggest empire. It's a new Monopoly you love in a different way, but on your phone anytime with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. You can play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. You can make your friends and family bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. Charge other players rent for your iconic Monopoly properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb that leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download the Monopoly Go app. Now free on the App Store on Google Play. Again, that's Monopoly Go. Get in the game right now. A lot of fun there for sure. It's a fun way to play a classic board game right there on your phone. All right, let us close the show. Look at some other rookies and where they're ranked. We'll go a little bit rapid fire because we got quite a few to get to. Next on the board, after Bowers and Caleb Williams, you do have Brian Thomas, and we'll see if he ends up with the Bills. But right now, conservatively on the board, 94 overall in the dynasty rankings, wide receiver 42, so just outside the wide receiver threes, but a special talent. If he ends up with the Bills, he can be their alpha and be their number one, and I think that would really bump up his rank. So this is probably a little bit too low for Brian Thomas Jr. And then we go to Jonathan Brooks, coming off an ACL, cut short his injury or the season at Texas with that injury last November. He's 98 on the board, RB31. So out of the RB2s here, just waiting to see how that injury plays out and to see if he lands with the Cowboys. We know that's the number one landing spot. The Chargers are pretty good as well, and we'll see if the Giants are interested in adding something to Devin Singletary there in that backfield. But we're going to watch Jonathan Brooks also to see his progress if he's ready to have a fantasy impact there. But conservatively now, RB31. It's probably about right just because we're not sure. Now, Jane Daniels might be a little bit low because he's got the cheat code element of the running quarterback, a la Lamar Jackson, these young quarterbacks. He's got the Heisman credentials, just made a lot of plays. He's ranked at 104. He's the QB 15 on the board. This would seem pretty high already, but I think it's maybe low because he's a running quarterback. He can give you all that with the juice. I think you looked at Anthony Richardson last year and you said, okay, this guy was on his way before he got hurt, had the shoulder injury. So I think you're looking at that type of quarterback, very similar in terms of the big arm and dynamic running ability. So QB 15 again might be a little conservative for him. I do like this ranking for the next player. This is 106. This is a wide receiver again. It is Troy Franklin out of Oregon. He was Bo Nix's go-to guy with the Ducks last year and at the end of his college career. Wide receiver 45, so right behind Brian Thomas. There's a good chance he could end up in a big spot, whether it's Bills or Chiefs. You could look at the Chargers if they go offensive line in the first round and go in a different direction in round 2. He could also be the new number 1 for the Panthers. They're picking right away at the top of the second round. So interesting there with Franklin. So really good stuff that he's ranked that high, but I think he could be special overall. And I just like his profile. He's big. He can stretch a field, has a great body here. So if he ends up on one of those, again, wide receiver needy teams, it's going to look really good. So you can put his arrow up as well. Now, Trey Benson, I'm not even sure if he's the number 2 running back on the board. There's different guys. There's Braylon Allen, the big explosive power back out of Wisconsin. There's Blake Corum we'll talk about a little bit later. So it just depends. I mean, I think that Cowboys landing spot is going to be key. The Chargers would be a close second to that. You know, the Cowboys don't really have much. It's coming down in these situations, Rico Dowdle and Gus Edwards. So let's watch Trey Benson out of Florida State. He's conservatively now at RB34. So it's going to be tight between Brooks and Benson. Who's the running back that you're going to target there among the rookies when thinking dynasty and long term? Xavier Worthy blew up the combine with his 40 record blazing time there. He's at wide receiver 48. So he's the last wide receiver 4 on the board in dynasty rankings. So let's watch where he lands. If he lands the Colts, that's where I have him right now in the second round. That could be a really good spot playing off Michael Pittman Jr. with the big arm of Richardson. So we'll see. But there's a chance that can go up. There's a chance that could go down as well. But I think conservatively keeping it as the end of the wide receiver 4s makes sense. Now, Ladd McConkey could be a little bit undervalued. He's 114 right now in the dynasty rankings, according to Fantasy Pros. I think if he lands in a good spot, maybe the Bills look at him early. It really depends. He has a wide range of outcomes. I think he's going to be more appealing than wide receiver 51 into the wide receiver 5s. I think he could have higher wide receiver 4 value than even Worthy. We just have to see how it plays out. Now, AD Adonai Mitchell, he's at 123. He's the wide receiver 55. I'm not as hot on him. I know we've seen him go up the boards a little bit, but Worthy has the pure speed. Yeah, Franklin has a good complete package in terms of being able to stretch the field. McConkey is a little bit more technically sound here. So Mitchell kind of gets caught a little bit with his teammate Worthy, who's just as fast and spreading the ball. So this is a little bit of a buyer beware on Mitchell. I think there's too much inflating his value here late in the process. And when I see these other receivers being a lot more productive, and I think that's where he belongs, behind all of them. Now, Keon Coleman, he did disappoint a little bit at the combine, but he's still a very technically sound receiver, plays better than maybe he tests here. So when you look at it, wide receiver 56 right behind Mitchell. So that's telling you between Worthy, McConkey, Mitchell, and Coleman, we're looking for landing spots, a bit of a toss-up 4 ways between knowing who's going to be the most effective. And then Blake Corum coming in as the third running back behind Brooks and Benson. I did mention the Chargers are a good spot to reunite Corum with Jim Harbaugh. I also think the Cardinals might be excellent too with James Conner. Get a change of pace there, bring in Corum and deliver. So a lot of ways to look at it. It also could come down to the Ravens. They have Derrick Henry, but they might want Corum. So go Harbaugh to Harbaugh with Corum. So a lot of things we're looking at. He's a talented back, so we're going to monitor that carefully. He's at RB37, perhaps a little too low based on his production in Michigan, based on what he can bring to an NFL team with his versatility here in 2024. So there you have it. These are the guys that you're looking at in Dynasty right now and exploring their values. Again, we'll get a lot more clarity and a lot of changes to come here once the draft is there. And these guys all have NFL teams, and we're not just basing it on their college talent and their pro upside, but we know their situation on top of their talent here to be productive. So I can't wait for that. We'll be getting all those answers, some of those answers next Thursday. Then by next weekend, we'll know where all these players have landed and where the value can be in fantasy football for longer term in Dynasty. So that wraps up today's show. Michelle, hopefully we'll be back here. Get well soon, Michelle. We miss you, but we will definitely keep talking more draft here and bring you more fantasy football goodness, as she would say, before the draft. Plenty more to talk about there, before the first pick comes off the clock. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer. Bye, everyone.